to introduce to you Reverend Michael Ramsdail. He grew up in Beloit and is currently pastor of the Lighthouse Fellowship and a member of the school board of Beloit as well. Michael graduated from Beloit College in 2006 and with majors in religious studies and communication, and I'm especially grateful for that because it gave me the opportunity to get to know Michael. And I have to say that some of the most valuable things I've learned in my time at Beloit, I've learned through ongoing conversations with Michael. Our conversations have taught me a great deal about what it means to be open-minded and what it doesn't mean. And it means something, I think, far more dangerous and radical than your average liberal secular person like me might think. It's not about ascribing to a particular set of political or social values, that's for sure. It means learning how to hear, really, really hear and grapple seriously with views that don't accord with your own, and thus to risk changing your mind, an expression I totally love when you think about what that means, right? In some ways it means learning a new language, I think, yeah? Being open-minded means learning a new language. And I think Michael is remarkably fluent in particular varieties of Christian and secular discourse, and that's a mark of open-mindedness. Right? But tonight I suspect Michael will be speaking Christian. And when he speaks Christian, Michael teaches me a lot about what it means to be open-hearted. So I look forward to learning from Michael again tonight, as so many other times, together with all of you. With that, let me welcome Reverend Michael Ramsdail.
Well, thanks for having me. I'm always honored to be asked to do anything on campus here, and I'm just thankful for my friends Bill and Professor Gummer and others that keep me in the loop and involved on the what's doings on campus, because my time here was very valuable to me, and I love to continue to be involved and give back, as should all of you. When you depart from here and go about your way, it's important to come back and contribute in whatever way you can, right? So I was asked to just kind of talk about my story, I guess, my journey, and things that are important to my faith as I see it today, and kind of reflecting on that, I guess I began to understand that I look at my faith as a process. I think there was a time where I thought there were certain things that constructed this is what it is, you know, and those things would never change. There were some non-negotiables, right? But the more I began to experience other things and the more you go through different things in life, for me, there become things that used to be so concrete in your mind that you run into this situation and think, maybe what I thought I knew about this isn't really what I think I know it to be now. And so I'm learning to accept where I'm at in my journey. And I thought it might be valuable for me to share with you a couple of things that I feel have become a part of my faith, that are very valuable through this process of self-discovery, through the process of sifting through all of this doctrine and all of the religious rites and rituals that I've been exposed to all of my life. I thought it might be interesting to share with you a few things that for me have kept me in this faith and have become valuable and somewhat indispensable to me at this point, right? And in thinking about that, I thought about this verse that that's shared in 1 Peter. It says, coming to him as to a living stone, rejected indeed by men, but chosen by God and precious to him. You also as living stones are being built into a spiritual house. And I thought it was interesting, this usage by the author of living stones. It's the only time in the New Testament where you see this particular reference to a stone as being alive. And it's alluded to in some texts in Isaiah, but within the New Testament, it's its only usage. They talk about stones as, just things being in the ground, but this reference in the Greek is referring to something that is kind of manufactured or prepared to be used for something. And I thought, such is the journey of my life. I feel like there is something greater to be had with my life that goes beyond the things that I can understand myself. So I live through my life with my own dreams and aspirations for things. But I always, in the back of my mind, have this sense of I'm not here just for me, right? But that my life is part of a greater, I don't want to say greater purpose, because that kind of creeps me out saying that, right? Like, I don't in any way feel like I am called to lead a nation of people into something, when I think of greater purpose or calling, I think of something like that. I don't feel it's necessarily that, right? But I don't feel like I was meant to live my life alone, but meant to live it as a part of something that means more than just my life on its own can mean. And in this particular text, it's referring to Jesus as one of these stones, right? And just like he is coming to God, being prepared for some sort of greater purpose, we also are doing the same thing. And I'm in the process in my life of trying to figure out what stones are in my life, what has been prepared, what has been placed into my heart and my spiritual journey that's important. And only time will tell where that is going and what the end result will be. Yeah. So I guess what am I? I would consider myself a Christian, right? And by that, for me, it suggests that there is a great importance on who I would refer to as the Christ, right? Or as some savior, right? A follower of this entity that I believe to be Jesus, yeah. And Romans tells us that if we confess with our mouth that Jesus is Lord and believe in our heart that God raised him from the dead, we will be saved, right? So for me on my journey, the kind of only qualifier for me to be a part of whatever this journey is that I believe that. And that is something throughout my journey that I've questioned from time to time, but there have been some things that have been valuable to me and have touched me in a place in my heart and my spirit that I feel comfortable saying that, and I feel comfortable believing that, right? Although it's something that I have no proof in, right? That this dude that we know as Jesus, that somehow belief in him and believing that he is some kind of supernatural zombie of some sort, right? That there's something salvific in the nature of that, yeah? So, yeah, I'm going to go ahead and believe that, because there's something in that that's valuable, right? So looking at a few of these stones, right, these things that throughout my journey I've kind of found to be valuable to me. The first thing I find within this Christian faith that's been very important to me is this idea of acceptance, right? And thinking about this guy Jesus, who's the center of this faith, as someone who was not accepted in philosophy and what we read by the people he supposedly came to save, right? Didn't like him and didn't really fit in. And for me in my journey, I felt like, wow, that's something I can kind of identify with, right? I can really identify with not fitting in and feeling as if I don't belong, feeling like I'm the only one in the room that did not get the same piece of information that everyone else got, you know. I remember that even in preschool, just feeling like everybody else knew how to tie their shoes, and I'm like, no one told me about this. You know, I don't know where this is coming from, and why is it that everyone else knows this but me, you know? And then you have this whole issue of my mixed heritage, right? My mother's white, my dad's black, and that for some reason being a very big problem and often a point of discussion for many people, especially adults in my presence, thinking I won't know what they're talking about, you know. But you do know, right? You do know that somebody's saying something about you that is otherizing you, yeah, is putting you outside of this group. And to my black friends in school coming up, I wasn't really black to them, right? Because my mom was white. And so then you hang around all the white kids. Well, you're definitely not one of them, right? So it's like, you know, Jesus Christ, where do I fit in, you know? And I look at this guy and I read through this story of Jesus, and it, for whatever reason, this character, right, stands out to me as someone who went through the same thing, right? Having kind of ambiguous heritage and family structure, right? Say hi to your dad for us, Jesus. You know, I went through that same kind of stuff, right? Like, who is your father really? You know, we don't know. And it's like, oh, he's coming. He'll be here at some point. Everybody's like, yeah, sure, right, you know. Then for me, this not only dealing with this mixed heritage, right, but also then coming up in a situation of poverty, right, is another layer. And for some reason, this faith seems to suggest to me that the importance is not on your socioeconomic status, right? But on a belief, on the ability to believe in something, no matter where you're at, that if you can cultivate that belief, there's acceptance, right? And that's something that's appealing for me, or was, you know. Because we definitely did not have our ability to buy our way into any organization, right? My mom never told me about Boy Scouts or any of this stuff, right? Because we could not afford it. And I see all my friends in elementary school coming in with like a blue shirt and the scarf thing, you know, whatever. And I thought, man, that looks pretty cool, you know. And talking about den leaders and stuff, I'm like, yeah, you know, this is fun. I asked my mom about that. We can't afford that. Are you kidding me? You know. So there was really no group for me to be a part of that I could be accepted into. But we were always at the church. You know, we were always there because any activity going on there was free. I mean, yeah, they browbeat you into like, we want you to put money in this plate, you know. but you don't have to, you know. And we would, she'd always give me, a handful of pennies or a couple whatever, to put in there. That's your price of admission, whatever you can afford, seemed to be appealing to me, yeah. Because there was really no place for me coming up to go. There were no activities to do. There weren't really a lot of. My mom was so protective of me. She never let me spend the night at anybody's house. And when I got older, when she finally did, it was such a new experience to me. I actually would freak out and get sick to my stomach and have panic attacks because I had never been away from my mother, And then she's mad, you need to grow up and stop being such a baby. But you keep babying me, This whole thing, So there was this idea for me somehow that through this faith and how this faith is organized, right, in its various denominations, that there's a way to be accepted that goes beyond what your skin color is, goes beyond what street you live at, what job your parents have, what your family structure is, And again, something that I felt like this person, Jesus, understood, right? He'd go around saying crazy stuff that nobody would understand, but would make sense to me, right? It's come on, let's get up and go somewhere else. Well, where are we going? What are we? Well, foxes have holes and birds have nests, or whatever that saying is, right? But the Son of Man has no place to lay his head, right? He's I got nowhere to go. We're just gonna go. I don't have a place to call home. And I'm yeah, I can get down with that. I understand that. And then there's also for me as I get older the challenge of being unsuccessful and unaccepted in personal relationships. Those just seem not to last very long for me. And so that will make you feel it's difficult to be accepted, where the person you end up getting married to, that all just kind of ends up unraveling, right? Legally, I cannot publicly disparage my ex-wife, so I won't. But when these relationships fall apart, right, and things go on, you just kind of want someone or something that you feel is always going to be just down for you, no matter what you're going through, yeah. And then there's this challenge of being average, right? Just a regular person, right? And not feeling like you're doing anything or you're part of anything that really gives you any kind of special significance, right? You're just living your life, alongside a lot of other people living their life, and not really any group or organization to be a part of, and looking for someone or something to just accept you for who you are, And again, I felt like this guy Jesus went through the same thing. Isaiah talks about this guy, right? And he says that the Christ is going to shoot up like a root out of dry ground. That's him. That when we see him, he says in Isaiah 53, there is nothing by looking at him that we would desire anything from him. Right? I mean, this is the Savior of the faith, right? And the prophets describe him as a guy that when you look at him, there's nothing really particularly desirable about him, And it's well, if he doesn't have to look so special or appear on the surface to have a lot going on for him, then maybe it's okay, for me to just be a regular guy, right? And be a part of this, where I don't have to have X amount of money to buy my seat on this board of people that are doing great things, right? But just believe that this guy did something special for me, right? And that if I believe that, he's going to accept me, just as I am, you know. And a lot of the songs that we would sing would be about that kind of thing, right? There's a river, all sorts of like spirituals and stuff. A lot of songs about eating and drinking, right? A lot of thirsting for stuff. What's the one we used to sing a lot at altar time? It was, the come to Jesus moment in the sermon, where you're supposed to come to the altar and give your heart to the Lord. Come everyone if you're thirsty, drink from the well that won't run dry. Right? That song. And it's like, just come as you are, and you can find a place of acceptance, and that being a stone, a pillar of something for me that to this day has continued to be very valuable to me. Where other people in my life, at certain times, depending on what you do, might not accept you. You vote the wrong way in a meeting, and people that were cheering you on the next day are calling you up, like, what the hell is your problem, Or you see them in the restaurant, and before the big vote, they were like, hey, so proud of you, and then the next day, you walk by them and they pretend like they don't know you, I need to have something in my life, that I feel is a constant source of acceptance, right? No matter what I do or what I say. I found that to be something within Christianity for me that remains valuable. And then along with that, you have this stone of family, right? I didn't have my dad coming up. I didn't meet him till I was in college. And then I've only seen him twice in my life. Both times I had to drag my ass out to Ohio to see him, right? No effort on his part to come out and see me, right? So that can mess you up a lot, not having that structure that you think you should have, right? Knowing that there's something different about your family that people talk about, right? That people apologize to you for, can be very embarrassing, and I just remember a lot of people like, oh, I'm so sorry that you don't have that, or I'm sorry for you because you don't, that can really make you not feel so good, right? And then my mom having her own stuff to deal with that go along with that. Her being told by her mother that there was no way that she could accept having a black grandchild, right? Well, as a daughter, that's got to make you feel great, he's coming, and most likely he's not going to come out a different color, Mom. Like this is how it's going to be, And then to be told that by my grandmother, as a third grader, having lived my life up to that point at grandmother's house all the time, and having such a strong relationship, to then have your grandma say, you know what, it didn't always used to be this way. God did something in my life because I knew I could love a black baby, It's like, thanks, Grandma, So I came up with kind of this tense family environment, right? And then I look at this guy Jesus again, right? And he's at this place, somebody's house, talking about his father, and his kingdom and all of this, like he normally does. And his mom and his brothers are getting nervous because he's sounding crazy, right? And they, come to the house and they, could you just come out and talk to us, And they're like, hey, Jesus, your mom and your brothers are here. And Jesus says, who is my mother? And who are my brothers? And he looks around the room and he goes, here are my mother and my brothers, you know? And something about that for me was just like, yeah, I get that, you know? This idea and this philosophy that family is what you make it, you know? We talk a lot about you can't choose your family. But I think what Jesus tries to communicate through his message, right? And Paul talks about it is that somehow through this faith system, right, there's an adoption process that goes on here, right? Jesus prays, I pray that you're going to be one with me just as I'm one with my dad and he's one with me. We're all going to be like one together, And Paul talks about, we are heirs and joint heirs with Jesus, through this adoption, right? So there's this idea that I've picked up on through the faith that even when I didn't seem to have that family, that blood family there for me, right? To the extent that gives you the warm fuzzy, right? That yet and still through this system, through faith in this guy Jesus, my family is infinite, right? Where everywhere I go, people that share this same philosophy, right? We call ourselves brother and sister, and that was a big thing in the church growing up. It's not so much now in my experience, but everyone always called each other brother so-and-so or sister so-and-so, in church. It was, brother CM, brother Perry, brother Mary. Sister Mary. Brother Mary came later. So there was this idea that even when it was just like my mom and I on our own, somehow through this faith, our family unit was large. And there became then a group of people that just because we shared the same faith, took it upon themselves to help us out, and take care of us, and would come and help us out with chores around the home. When my mom struggled to pay bills, there were people within this church family, not even knowing, like my mom wouldn't ask for help at all. We would be sitting there with the lights off, and she would make it so fun, like, we're going to pretend like we're pilgrims, and we're going to use candles like pilgrims did, I don't know that we just can't afford to keep the lights on, my mom's trying her best, and instead of asking for help, she just make do, but somehow through the vibrations of the faith, right, there would be people that would just knock on the door, or you'd go to check the mail, and there'd be an envelope full of money, God told me you needed this type thing. That for me was like, wow, there's family here in a way that can be there for you when certain members of your family, your blood family, just are not there, are not around. So that for me was just another huge building block for me in my process that has been so important to my faith. And I've translated that into the way that I pastor, in considering my parishioners as my family members, right? And it's not people that are working for me, not people that are coming to learn from me, but people that are coming to share and bring me into their family, and me bringing them into mine. That together as a family, we go through this journey of life, and we are there for one another in ways that sometimes our family members can't be. Because there are some things that you just can't tell your blood relatives, or you have a very hard time doing that, right? but there can be people that are close to you in a spiritual way, or a friendship way that goes beyond sometimes what bloodlines go to. And the church became my extended family, and to this day, it is my family. And the churches that I've been a part of, as I see those people on my journey, there's a connection there. That I can travel to many different states and different countries and know that I have people who have, because of our like faith, adopted me into their family. Goes a long way when you feel like you've been rejected in your social circle, right? To know that there are people that are they're still going to be down for you just because they know that you somehow love and understand the same God that they do. Has been something very powerful for me, right? Then along with that, you have, for me, these other stones of faith and hope. And really, what this is about is what we would refer to as the triad of faith, right? Faith, hope, and love. These elements being very crucial for me in understanding my journey as a Christian, in a way that I feel is not only beneficial to me, but beneficial to, hopefully, the people that I come in contact and work with and friends with. These next three things of faith, hope, and love for me have made all of the other things of acceptance and family is what make it all possible. Jesus tells his people, don't let your hearts be troubled. Don't worry. If you believe in me, believe in the one who sent me. That I'm going to prepare this place for you, that where I am, you're going to be also, right? This idea that there's something on the other side of this life that is there for you, as not as a reward necessarily, but as part of your inheritance, as part of really this idea of life really beginning when the spirit leaves the body, right? That really bringing into this family of the faith and celebrating the life of the faith is just getting started when the body itself dies, and that has been something very important for me, because life can get really crappy, and sometimes I think, man, if this is all that there is, this is ridiculous, I want something a little bit better that goes beyond, the X amount of decades that I'm not even promised here, and something that goes beyond the pain and the heartache of life in this world. We had a student at one of our schools, did you hear about this? That passed away recently, and it's like, what is this? You think life just isn't fair to this little girl, this innocent girl, life just gets taken away like that, and we hear in the Proverbs, right, that our life is like a breath. It's a vapor, and it's gone. It's dust in the wind. That this is the life we live on in the body, right? And I just look at that and think, man, I have to have faith that there's something more, that there's something beyond this, that if there is a soul within me, if there's a spirit within me, I have to believe that lives on somehow outside of the pain that we experience in the body, and if I am to believe in this Jesus, right, and God as these father figures for me, right? And this is replacing something that I'm missing. Unlike my natural father, they'd have to come back somehow in my life at some point, right? And, Jesus says, believe, I'm not going to leave you as orphans, right? But I will come back for you, he says in John 14 and 18. So there's this part of this faith, right? This belief in something that you cannot see, prove, or understand, but somehow believing in it gives you comfort and provides and affords for you a hope that for whatever reason, no matter what you face, just won't disappoint you, because you have that faith and that hope together that this entity, this God, this Jesus, is real and is going to do what he says he's going to do, But above all of that, there's this, throughout all of it, is this idea of love for me, right? And what that means in the faith. And this understanding that this relationship that those of us that believe have with the Creator is not one of us searching him out to find him and him trying to keep himself away from us, right? Or being mysterious to us, but this idea that the Creator is by all means necessary looking for a way to bring the creation closer to himself, right? And as I read through the scriptures, this has become what I see and what I've understood, that if you look at the creation story, right, as logically ridiculous as it might be, right? But if you're going to believe that Jesus is the Son of God, why not buy into all of it? I say just go all out, When we look at this Genesis account, right, and God making all this stuff, and saying all this is good, and all of this, then making humankind and looking at that and saying this is something that's very good, And then when we go out and say, Adam and Eve are like, listen, we're going to do what we want to do, and somehow this causes this rift, and they're hiding, right, from the creation. But God is calling out to the creation, right? Where are you? Not you messed up, go away from me, right? But where are you? And they say, well, we did what you told us not to do, and we were afraid, so we hid, And then what we see the Creator doing then is making a sacrifice so that their bodies that they realized were naked could be covered up, right? And you fast forward then to, all these generations trying to find some way to recreate this sacrifice, right? To make this relationship strong again, and the Creator looking and saying, well, you're not really able to do this because you're the creation, not the Creator, It's kind of one thing that you're not able to do, To coming into this verse that many of us know, John 3:16, right? God loving the world so much that he gave this, the one thing that he had, that if you just believe that happened, even though the body's going to die, the soul is then guaranteed everlasting life and unbroken fellowship, right, with this creation, just how we wanted it in the first place, And then trying to grasp and understand what James says, that God is love, And in my pursuit of trying to understand what love is and all of my experiences of finding out what the hell it isn't, right? People telling you that they love you and then somehow, you know, taking your heart out and stomping on it, and taking a baseball bat and crushing it, right? I mean, have any of you been there, right? With someone that's like, I love you, and then they go ahead and rip the heart out of your body and eat it in front of you and laugh, you know? I have found, right, in this person of Jesus, right, that I think that Christ teaches that this love that he has is something that is not just something that's said, right? It's not a statement, it's not a feeling, it's not an emotion, but it's an action to him, right? So he would say to his disciples before he's killed, you know, the Son of Man has come not to be served, but to serve, right? And then believing that when Paul says that after he came and served with his life, death, and resurrection, that now he sits with the Creator, constantly making petition or intercession on my behalf, you know? Like, hey God, you know my friend Michael Ramsdail, you know? He's going through some tough stuff right now, you know? Show him a little love, you know? As something being very special to me, right? And no matter how dark days get or how difficult my experience gets, for me, I have faith and hope that the love that God has is something that's unconditional, something that's never ending, something that Paul says in Corinthians suffers a long time, right, with me. Something that's kind, that doesn't envy, is not boastful, not puffed up, not rude to me, you know, not seeking its own way, not provoking me, not thinking evil of me, not laughing and rejoicing when I make mistakes, right? But that this love that is in the Creator and exhibited through the life, death, and resurrection of Jesus then as being something that rejoices in the truth, something that bears all things with me, believes in me entirely, hopes in me, endures all things with me, and at the end of the day will never fail me, has been something for me that has been indispensable. And in my process of being exposed to other faith walks and practices and doctrines, right, that right there to me has been not just a stone, but the cornerstone, right, of my faith, and what, as enticing as other things might be, I've never quite really been able to let go of, because it has rung so true for me. It hits me in a place that makes sense to me, that if I then do what then Christ commands me to do, he says, you know, a new commandment I give you, that you love one another even as I have loved you. You know, first they ask him, what's the greatest commandment? He's like, well, it's, you know, love God with all your heart, soul, mind, strength. And then the second is just as important, love your neighbor as yourself, right? On this hangs all the law and the prophets. Everything is balanced on that. But then he goes further, and he's like, because guess what? Sometimes we don't know what love is, and sometimes we don't know how to love ourselves. And then, you know, if I'm going to love you like I love myself, if I'm not loving myself, I'm not showing love to you very well, right? So Jesus is like, let me solve that problem by telling you, you know, you're to love your neighbor as I've loved you, you know. And that if I make that my pursuit, right, to love people I've come into contact with as I think Christ has loved me, I feel that does good not only for me, but for the people I come in contact with, right? Knowing that the life that I live is just a blink of an eye, you know? So I shouldn't live trying to fulfill its desires, right? But that I should empty the body of all of its desires and live my life to serve my neighbor, because once I've done that, then there's going to be a time where I can enter into some eternal rest, right? And party it up, you know? But in the meantime, right, I'm commanded by Christ to love people I come in contact with like he loved me, you know? And with that, cuts out all the bullshit of doctrine and religiosity that consumes the church that I'm a part of, you know? Yet still I just can't quit it, I can't leave it, because there's something within it for me that says this is real, you know? That God's love for me is a real thing. Because there was a time where I was a mess, you know? And I sat in my car with a 12-gauge shotgun, ready to just end it, locked and loaded. And I prayed one prayer. I said, God, if you love me and you care about me and you're real, you better do something, because I am checking out right now. And I remember pulling the trigger in that thing, man. And that gun not going off. Loaded, no reason that it should have failed, right? But in that moment, I was like, dude, Jesus is badass. Right? Because nothing else for me made sense but that, you know? And I've tried to live my life since, you know, trying, man, to just, to fulfill this new commandment, right, that God gave the church. And I think if more people in the church did that, I mean, of course, we always think if everyone did what I think should be done, the world would be a better place, you know. So, you know, I mean, I could be totally wrong, you know, but all I know is that I'm not getting choked up. These allergies are killing me. You know, that there is a spiritual house, right, that has some sort of purpose, that I feel grateful to, alongside Jesus, be taken by God in his hands, having the rough edges chipped off so that I can be formed into something that, even though this guy Jesus, you looked at him, there's nothing special that you desire him, yet still this guy, according to the faith, is the cornerstone of all of it. He's the one that everything is hinged on. And just like him, that scripture says, I'm also a living stone, right? Being built into the spiritual house. So this guy Jesus is not only my Savior, but he's my brother. He's my co-laborer, you know. He's my brother. He's my mother, my father. That through this faith, there's somehow a oneness that's mysterious, right? But that also makes you feel like you're accepted, like you have value, like you have family. And that gives you, from that experience, a sense of faith, hope, and love that can carry on your darkest time. That's all I have to say about it.
Now we have still some time before like 8 o'clock if people have questions.
Oh, we can't do this in just 5 minutes.
Couple questions.
Yeah.
Your story about your experience sitting in the car with the gun
Yeah.
changes my question a little bit maybe, but
think as the experiences come, right? There's something that happens to the things that I believe that definitely make it become more real for me, right? That take it beyond a set of established doctrine, right, and translate it then into a real faith, you know. Because a lot of what I had to go by was just what the doctrine said, right? And so you adhere to a doctrine. I did because that's all I knew, you know. I grew up in this environment, right? Only hearing this stuff. So as a kid, I didn't have any exposure to anything else, right? So I didn't know there was anything else out there, you know. But as I continue on my journey and get exposed to different things that oftentimes sound appealing, then it's when the spiritual experiences come in and play their part in establishing, the belief and structure of the faith, which then changes for me what my doctrine becomes, right? And I've since, left the organization that I grew up in because my experience said to me that some of the things within the doctrine did not ring true to me, So those things do change. But for me, there's been value with both. Yeah. Does that answer the question?
This is not so much a question, but an observation. Your story, what really was compelling to me was in hearing how, well, it was so, your story, you were so willing to tell your story and to embody the story of a believer and a lover of Jesus who is beloved by Jesus. Oftentimes I have trouble with these days with sort of connecting with sort of sin and forgiveness at an arm's length. But it felt to me like your story was more about it was filled with pain. And then through that pain, just an embracing, overwhelming sense of belovedness that doesn't take the pain away, but sort of. I just want to say that that's what I heard was in a fresh way that grace is about this sort of loving embrace. All those living stones you talked about seem to be about this where you ended. So, thank you.
Yeah.
I think this isn't a fully formed question yet, I don't think, but one comment building off of what Bill was saying was that many times I hear from typically more secular friends of mine that a main motivation for faith is this recognition of brokenness, or just of like unideal family situations, or somehow having this need that needs to be filled and finding that relief in religion.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes when they bring it up, it's in a more critical, like, your religion is a crutch for you and you flock to it, and that sort of, for that reason. And I think there's some real truth to the aspect of brokenness and pain, and I don't want to dismiss their comments about that, but there is something in the way that they're speaking about that is flawed or not quite on point. And so I'm wondering if you've had interactions with people around that topic of why are people drawn to religion, and is it as a band-aid or is it as in a healing way? Do you sort of understand where I'm going?
Kind of. I don't know, I guess I just kind of get uncomfortable talking to other people, speaking for other people's journey, you know. I do feel, though, as I said when I started out, that, you know, my journey and my faith has been a process, right? And so there have been different times or different stages that its existence in my life has meant things entirely different than it means to me now, right? So I think for a long time, Christianity was in my life because, one, it was forced on me, right? There was no, I don't want to go to church today, okay, stay home. Like, that was never an option. And if you pretended to be sick so that you could skip out of church, that didn't work either, because they all believe in divine healing. So my mom would be like, oh my God, you're sick. I have no insurance. I can't afford to take you to the doctor. Jesus needs to fix it. So throwing up or with a fever, she would take me, like, at the end of service in my pajamas, wrapped up in a blanket, right up to the altar to have the pastor and the other elders of the church to pour oil on me and pray over me that I would be healed. So, I mean, it was like even when you were sick and trying to find excuses not to go, you still had to go. So there was that part of it, right? But then even as I began to transition and I had more of a choice, more of an option on my participation, then there begins to be a lot of the guilt, sin, condemnation kind of thing where you need this because you're a sinner, and you better be sure to ask Jesus to forgive you of your sins before you go to bed, because if you were to die in the middle of your sleep and you had not asked for forgiveness, you would surely go straight to hell, So then at that time, faith is motivated then by fear, right? So it becomes, there are many different reasons, right? But sometimes those reasons can change, but you have to look into yourself and kind of work that stuff out, on your own. And a lot of things for me through that process have been removed, mainly having to do with what the faith tells you you cannot do. A lot of it coming up was for me was all these lists of things you can't do, right? That are sinful to do. That if you do this, that's being worldly. All this stuff. And I just said to myself, why am I part of a system that is only telling me things I can't do? you know? I wanna be a part of something that gives me freedom to do something, right? So then my faith really began to be redeveloped, and I had to begin to reorganize myself around the freedoms and the liberty that are in the faith, you know, as opposed to all these lists of doctrine that say this is stuff you have to avoid, you know. What else?
I kind of want to follow up on this question, if that's okay.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, at least, and I'm not trying to speak for you, but what I heard in the question that I thought was a really important point,
Okay.
right, is that there's a way in which the unbelievably compelling narrative you told us tonight, right, can be read by a cynical, secular observer as confirming in almost a blatant way that religion is, or Christianity is false consciousness, right?
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean?
Right.
That is sort of, that well, you're almost saying, like, I believe it because it helps me, I need it, right?
Sure.
And so it's, or even that, you know, it's true because it helps, not because it's true. Or, do you see what I mean? There's
Yes.
a kind of misreading of the narrative that's possible there. And I mean,
Well, who knows that that's a misreading of it? I mean, you know, that very well might be the reality of it.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, I don't know that.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, if I.
But I mean, so is that what you say? It's like, okay, yeah, sure.
I guess it is. Yeah. I guess I just said it. Right. I mean, because I can't prove it, right? I mean,
It seems like such arguments would be really boring to you.
yeah. I mean, fine. You know, it's asinine and foolish. Okay, fine. Or whatever. It's a it's a cognitive coping mechanism, right, for my pain and struggle. Yeah, I don't know that I can't disagree with that, right?
But it's
Because
also,
it is something I escape into. Yeah.
I should say, but it's also a lived reality in the flesh, in the body, in
Sure.
relationships.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, I feel that. You know, whatever it is, whatever its isness is, right? I feel that just take the supernatural away from it, right? Just as a social philosophy, right? To this point in my life, there's still been value with it, right? And in the way in which I live my life with others in the world around me.
So, okay, can I just push a bit further? Because like,
Yeah.
I mean, I can totally see why for you it's like, all right, whatever, you know? But, I mean, what about that person and that narrow kind of view that person's holding? I mean, how do you address that? Maybe not to address, you know, it's not, so if it's not about, you know, their misunderstanding of you, but about what the confines of their views are and how limiting that is for them, how do you help them? Do you see what I'm saying?
I mean,
It's a different
are they wanting to be helped
Well, I mean,
that way? I mean,
no.
I mean, if that's
Can't speak for them.
right? I mean,
Yeah.
and I don't.
I don't know. I mean, I try to do that in my classes all the time, right? I mean, maybe I shouldn't be, but that's part of what I try to do, right? I'm just wondering because I think you're a powerful teacher about these things. So what is it that, you know, how do you kind of
feel as if I can't answer that with a phrase, right, or a suggestion, right? Because I feel that kind of tension is very difficult to address with any form of rhetoric, right? So for me, how I've looked at it on this campus, right, is my continued involvement and exposure of how I live this out as kind of approving, right? For those that have that particular view, right? I don't feel like there's anything that I could say, right? I don't feel like there are any references I could bring or any analogy I could share, right? To in essence break through that or to open up some sort of dialogue, right? But only through a long time of just trying to consistently apply the principles that I feel are religiously true for me, right? And my practical everyday experience, right? As that being kind of a case study for people if they choose, to test and examine for themselves. Yeah? I feel like anything else that I've attempted to do has really had little value. That's the best I have for you. Okay.
What I hear you saying there is basically you fall back on letting the Spirit of Christ's love be in the body of your actions and relationships, like basically this new commandment.
Yeah.
That's what it sounds like you're saying.
Yeah.
Try to live that.
Well, it's the one verse I really struggle with, especially lately, has been, it says, if any of you are going to follow me, let them deny themselves, pick up their cross, and follow me. The denying of self or dying to self, I feel like I'm working on making progress with that. But this idea of picking up my cross, I don't know what the hell that is. I don't know what that means. Follow me, okay. Deny self and follow, all right. But part of my process, man, is identifying what my cross is. What he means by that. And I feel like a lot of times I make my journey very difficult by trying to pick up a burden that isn't mine to carry, which to me puts a big roadblock in the emptying of self or the denying of self. Because if I feel like I'm obligated to pick up this really heavy thing, right, then that's really kind of a self-serving, self-aggrandizing thing, right? Like a suffering for something, right? Approving of oneself when I should really just get rid of the self altogether, What else? I got nowhere to be. We could be done if we want to be done too. Yeah.
You said that sometimes you feel like
don't do very well with that. Yeah. I feel like I internalize a lot of things. Yeah. At the same time, I don't know that that's wrong for me to do. Right? Because the scripture tells us to weep with those who weep, you know, mourn with those who mourn, rejoice with those who rejoice. So I don't know that necessarily doing anything wrong with that, right? But at the same time, me reminding myself that Jesus said that he came to seek and to save the lost, right? Didn't send me to do that. You know, told me to make, go and make disciples, right? The seeking and saving, there's nobody I can save, right? Sometimes I forget that, I want to save.